In this short bonus video, I want to show you another command line packet analysis tool that I've really come to love. And it's not nearly the Swiss Army knife tool that TCP dump or T-Shark is, that's designed for a whole wealth of analysis. It's actually a very focused and specific tool called CapTipper, which is really focused on HTTP analysis of packet data. Now, as I mentioned, CapTipper is designed for security analysis, generally of HTTP traffic. So it's written by security practitioners for security practitioners with a specific focus on a certain type of traffic, which means it's for a very specific use case, albeit one that comes up all the time. Now, CapTipper is written in Python and provides an interactive analysis shell. That means that not only does it allow you to parse a packet, but it allows you to explore that packet data kind of interactively. And this will make a little bit more sense as I go through an example here in a minute. CapTipper is ideal for analyzing drive-by exploitation, so folks who are exploited by just browsing to websites that may be infected. Exploit kit activity, which is a very popular way of delivering malware, perhaps the most popular way as of the release of this course of delivering malware. People getting redirected to traffic distribution servers that systematically deliver up targeted exploits based upon what the browser is running or what technology exists on the victim or target machine. Also, just general malicious compromised website communication. If you want to analyze it and you're dealing with HTTP traffic, then CapTipper is a really robust way to do that. So if you're involved in security analysis or just want to get a different perspective on security analysis, then CapTipper is something I certainly recommend. I use it all the time, and it's also incredibly useful for some of the security exercises we'll do in one of the later modules in the course. So here, I'm just going to go through a quick demo of some of the capabilities of CapTipper, just enough to show you what it can do and how to do those things. So if you want to use it and get your feet wet a little bit, you have a base to start off from. I've downloaded CapTipper from the GitHub repository that I showed you, and you can, of course, download that with Git so that you can just do a Git update to keep that up to date, or you can download it as a zip. And in this case, for simplicity, I just downloaded the zip file of the contents. Now, here we have a lot of files to work with, but running CapTipper is quite simple. It's a matter of just running this captipper.py application and then specifying the packet capture you want to open. So I'm opening one that we're going to examine later in this course, EK to CryptoWall 4, which has a lot of HTTP traffic in it and is a really good example of a packet capture that we can use to learn a little bit about the capabilities of this tool. Now, notice I'm running it with the sudo command, and that's because CapTipper creates a web server instance to provide additional capabilities for the analysis. And we'll talk about that here in a minute. Now, that said, when I run the tool, a couple interesting things happen. Of course, it tells me a little bit of information about the tool here at the top. It tells me the PCAP it's analyzing and gives me some data surrounding it. Now, what this screen does is it's kind of your home base. It breaks down the communication that is in the capture file, the HTTP communication, by the requests that are being made. And remember, HTTP, if you haven't seen that module, is really a request and response based protocol. So the requests and the responses are where the action is happening, and this breaks that down really, really nicely. I love this view. So let's see what's going on here. First, we have an ID number that's assigned to each specific request, and this is incrementing by one each time. And we'll use this ID number to reference these specific requests so we can dig into those a bit further. From there, we have the URI being requested. So we have /index.php/services here. We have something a bit longer here, but we have that URI. We have some information about the disposition of the content that was downloaded. So it looks like we have some HTML text here. It looks like we have a Flash file here, or at least that's what it's being reported as. Some binary data, some more HTML data, and so on. From there, we have the file name where we have one. So here we see voehsq.php and so on. So we have those file names. Here's another one here. We have the size of the data. So 350 kilobytes right here, 20 bytes right here, not a lot there. And then we have this interpretation of the data that was downloaded. And this says magic because this is referring to the magic bytes. So it's doing an analysis of the first few bytes of the downloaded content to compare those against the list of known magic byte entries to determine what it believes the file to be. So in this case, you see we have some that just tell us it's a simple binary, some it looks like clear text. And of course, here we have an SWF, a flash file that was detected, which is consistent with the MIME type that was reported in the file transfer. So this is pretty cool, and then it gives us a very simple breakdown of everything that's going on based upon requests and responses in the HTTP data. We don't see the requester and the responder here. It's all that data is hidden from the current view, but we did get a pretty nice little base to work from, so that's pretty cool. Now, we see a couple other things here. First of all, we see that it started a web server on our local host. That's why we needed administrative privileges. And it does that to give you other analysis opportunities by allowing you to recreate these requests. So it starts a browser on your system, and I can make a request to localhost on port 80 for /index.php/services, and it will allow me to download this data as though it was the real web server serving the data. So it emulates that. Very useful for malware analysis or retrieving these files if you want to download them in that way. We're not going to do that here, but it's a pretty cool little feature. Of course, you can run CapTipper without sudo privileges, without those elevator privileges, and that web server won't start, and you can still do the analysis. So that's pretty cool. You don't actually have to have that. Now, that said, notice down here at the bottom that we weren't kicked back out to our command prompt. Instead, we have this CT option, which stands for CapTipper, and we're actually now in an interactive shell. And what that means is we can start browsing around this data in this interactive shell with all the different commands that CapTipper provides for us. That's pretty cool. So let's go through a couple of those now. If we want to start digging into this capture file, we really need to know what commands are available to us for analysis. And I'll get that list by just issuing the help command, which gives me the different options that I can use. And there are certainly a lot of them. We're not going to go through all of them here. I just want to go through the ones that I think you'll use the most commonly, and then show some different examples of how they might be able to help you. The most simple command here is probably the info command. So if I type that, notice it gives me information about how to use it. And it says the usage is info and then conv ID. And that conv ID is this conversation ID number we discussed earlier. And that's really your gateway to really using most of these commands. Most of them have a simple input, and it's the conversation ID you want to learn about. So let's focus on this conversation ID number 2 here. It contains this flash file, and that is maybe of a little bit of interest to us. So let's focus on that for the examples we're going to go through. Now, if I want info about this conversation, I just type info and then the number 2, which is the ID of that conversation, and it's going to give me some basic information about it. It knows which IP address represents the web server. In this case, it's this 45.32.238.202 address. It gives me a timestamp of when it was captured, the host information, refer, really all the things that the tool thinks is important to provide to you from the HTTP transaction data that is available in the capture file. Again, displayed in a kind of an intuitive way, all the stuff you're really interested in from a security perspective. Let's try another command here, and let's try the head command. This is going to give us the header of the response object, which is what this is in this case. In this case, it's at HTTP 200 OK, tells you that the content type is Shockwave Flash, and gives you the basic response data you would get there as well. So that's another pretty cool thing. In this case, we know we've transferred a flash file, and that's maybe of interest. So one of the things I might want to do as a security practitioner is take the file hash of that flash file and submit it to something like VirusTotal or PassiveTotal or some other type of OSINT resource so I can do analysis on it. And instead of manually extracting that and getting the hash, you can actually do that automatically here with the hashes command. So I'll just enter hashes, and again, it wants an object ID. So I'll say hashes for number 2, and it's going to give me those hashes pretty much instantaneously. And not only that, it's going to give me a lot of them. It's going to give me the MD5, the SHA-1, the SHA-256, SHA-512, and so on. So regardless of what tool I am dumping that hash into, at this point, I've got the hash that I can use. Now, a lot of good use cases for this. I can search for this hash in an OSINT source like a virus total, or I can actually take this hash and have some built-in detection technology. If I know this file is bad, I can drop that into that, or maybe drop it into a YAR rule, something that will detect this hash if it shows up on one of my endpoints. So pretty cool for pivoting straight from packet analysis to detection. Now, another thing here is if you want to try multiple conversation IDs. Let's say we want to try this for conversation ID 4 and we get that object 5. Well, this is great, but what if you forget the conversation ID? And that's a common thing that might occur. The good thing is you can get that list back really easily just by entering cons, CONVS. That'll get you this list back. So you can enter cons and you can enter help. Help, and see this output again where you have all the conversation IDs, all the commands you can use, and that's really your gateway to getting back to where you can explore a little bit, is displaying that conversation list and displaying the help document or the help commands as well. There are a couple other additional commands that I think are pretty helpful and things you might use from time to time. One of those is the iframes command. Iframes are often injected into sites to allow redirections for additional data that may lead to something malicious. So you can use the iframes command. It again wants a specific ID. It looks like if I run iframes on the conversation 2 here, there's none found. Conversation 0, none found. It doesn't look like there are any iframes to be found here, but if there are, you can output those and see what may have redirected someone to a specific area in this case. Another couple things that I find interesting, there's a strings command here. It also wants an object ID, so we can say give me the strings in object 1. It looks like there weren't a lot of them there. Strings in object 2, looks like there were quite a few strings in that one, although most of them maybe not entirely readable. So it's strings a la what you would run on the command line as well, to get more information about about what you're looking at. Another cool thing I like about CapTipper is that it's pretty extensible in terms of plugins. And you notice there's an option here for plugin. If I run that command, it'll tell me once again I have to specify some additional parameters. In this case, I have to specify what plugin I want to use, and then from there I'll have parameters beyond that. So it looks like I can do plugin-L and it will list all the plugins available, and in this case there are 3 that ship out of the box. Of course, you can write your own plugins, and the framework is not too complicated. If you've got a little bit of Python ability, you can write these pretty easily. So we have 3 plugins here available to us. One is to check the host, to check if a given host is alive. Another is to find external scripts in the object body, and one is to print the body of a conversation and un-gzip it if needed. So these are all pretty useful things. Let's actually try this. Let's go ahead and run plugin. Let's do the find scripts plugin. That's a pretty darn useful one. And let's run it on the conversation we were looking at earlier, conversation 2. And in this case, no scripts were found, so there weren't any there. Let's try that again on conversation 0. Okay, here we go. Here we've got some actual scripts that can be interpreted. It looks like we've got a lot of JavaScript going on here. And chances are maybe one of these is malicious. These first couple look fine. This third one looks like there might be something to that. So then once we found that script, we can play around with it, pull it out, maybe do some type of analysis of that as well. So this is a good way to find the scripts that exist and narrow down on those, which is really important when you're analyzing potentially malicious communication. Pulling back up my conversation list and the help list here, and I just want to cover a couple more things that I think are important for you before we end this video. One scenario I mentioned a minute ago was taking the hash of a file and submitting it to VirusTotal. That's a really common thing. There's actually a tool in here that will do that automatically for you, not just give you the hash, but automatically submit it to VirusTotal. And you'll see here that's the VT command. Now, if I were to type VT and hit enter, it would actually fail for me, because to do that, you have to have a VirusTotal API key. There's a public key you can get. You can also pay for a private key, which has more functionality. I don't have that entered in right here, so you're not going to see that. But if I did have it, I could specify VT, enter in the specific conversation ID, and it would take the hash of that file, submit it to VirusTotal, and tell me whether or not there were any detection on it right here from this command line prompt, which is really cool, saves a ton of time, an incredibly valuable thing. The final command I want to tell you about here is important to talk about because it's dangerous. Again, anytime you're dealing with a packet capture where bad stuff happened, generally there's a chance you can screw up and click the wrong thing and infect your own system, because after all, we do have malicious content being transferred across the wire, potentially a malicious flash file. Looks like we have another binary following that, so maybe some type of malicious something or another after that as well. And that command is the open command. And notice if I type open, it says open the URL of the object in the default browser. As I said, CapTipper starts a web browser and then hosts these files where you can download them like they were downloaded in the packet capture itself, which is useful for a whole slew of reasons. If you want to retrieve the file or create a new PCAP from it or do some malware analysis, that's very useful. However, you have to be careful. One thing I could do right now is tell it to open this flash file right here, this conversation number 2. And if I hit open 2, it's going to open a browser and browse to that flash file. Now, that's okay unless this flash file happens to be malicious in nature and I'm running a vulnerable version of Flash, at which point it may exploit my system, launch and download additional malware, and that's a bad time for everyone. So I stress this very intently, is be careful with this open command. In general, don't use it unless you absolutely have to. Maybe if you're on a malware analysis system, it makes sense. But if you're analyzing malicious traffic or something you suspect to be malicious, do not use the open command. It is quite dangerous. Honestly, I wish there was a little prompt here in the tool that would warn you about that, because if I run open in the command, I could definitely do some bad things. So that's something to certainly be aware of. So that's going to do it for our discussion of CapTipper. Hopefully you get an idea of what the capabilities it provides are and how you might want to use those. For me, what I generally do is when I believe there's suspicious web-based communication going on, oftentimes I will isolate that communication out to its own PCAP file, save it out separately, and then open it up in CapTipper. Even though CapTipper is command line based, it provides a really useful interface for analyzing this data and getting very fast answers to the questions you may be asking. Just this conversation screen alone gives me a lot of information that I would have to do a lot of filtering in Wireshark to get, and certainly would not necessarily be able to get all this information on the same screen at once. So a very specific tool for a very specific use case, but one that is entirely and very valuable to my analysis process. So that's why I wanted to include it here in this course as a bonus video, because if you're doing security analysis, I think it will be very valuable to you as well. So make sure to take a moment to check out CapTipper. Really easy to download, really easy to use. Just be careful when you're using it.